Decorating Pages is a podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets. Interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim Wanup. Well, it's pandemic week number... I don't know, actually. I'm really at the point where I'm forgetting people's birthdays. I don't know what date it is. I literally forgot my lead man, Patrick Alvin's birthday this past week, and I feel horrible because I don't know what date it is. And that, never mind, I don't have a concept, all of a sudden June's over. I don't know if everyone's like this or I don't know, but I hope everyone is staying happy and healthy and wearing your mask. What's one up watching this week? Well, I finished that first season of Castle Rock, which I was enjoying. Nice little wrap up there. I liked it. Tricky little ending. And then I got lost a little bit in the second to last episode. There was a lot of I don't really know what's going on, but I like it type thing. So then started the second season, which is the main character is Annie Wilkes from Misery, which I loved Misery. I read the book right before the film came out when, I think I was 14 or something. But I've always just loved that movie. So I was excited for this second season and zipped right through that in about 3 nights. There's a whole side story because it's got to involve Castle Rock and the town. And it's not exactly the same as the movie, which is nice because, you don't want it to be the same anyway. So it was good. And there's a payoff at the end if you're a Misery fan. If you stick with it, it's really good. There is one amazing set in it, which I really enjoyed, which is this Emporium Galorium type set, this little store of just everything being refurbished and just tons of crap everywhere. And one of those nitty gritty little sets that I really enjoy doing. So it was really fun to see on there. Finished Somebody Feed Phil. And basically, it just made me hungry to travel. So really, my husband and I are just really itching to travel at this point, especially after watching that show. I watched Knives Out, which I hadn't seen. Just a wonderful little gem of a movie. I thought a little fun. That poor girl had to cry in almost every scene. I felt bad. The main girl, I don't know her name, but the house is extraordinary. I mean, I read that it took 3 houses to make up that gigantic house, to make it look like one. But just phenomenal set dressing details in this, of this cluttered yet stylized, just beautiful house, beautiful dressing, so interesting. I couldn't keep my eyes off of the dressing, the actors alone, but everything from the sheets to the wallpaper just had these great details. So it's really great eye candy if you haven't seen Knives Out. It's pretty good. I started the second season of The Politician on Netflix, and I don't know. I wasn't really into the first season. I watched it because I really like the people who made it. Jamie McCall, who I'm currently working with, a production designer. So the story's, it's something different, which I like, but I don't know if I have it in me to do a whole second season of it, and I'm really not a Gwyneth fan. So if you're a Gwyneth fan and you're into something a little different, The Politician is kind of crude, but good. I did take some more master classes this week with Jane Goodall in The Art of Conversation. I'm good. I think there was a lot of monkey talk in there, and it made me feel bad for the monkeys and the gorillas, and I don't really need to feel bad right now. So it was good overall. We're doing a date night with Thomas Keller and doing cooking and wine appreciation classes. So that's kind of fun. I hope everyone's doing a little date nights here and there to get us through this. But yeah, the cooking thing, I really want to like nail the staple meals, like a chicken cutlet or like a cast iron steak. Like that's one of my goals through this pandemic, and I think I'm doing pretty good. On this episode, I speak with production designer Brian Stonestreet. Brian's career is jam-packed with huge live programs all year long. Brian designs the stages for live events like the Grammys, the Golden Globes, the Soul Train Awards, the BET Hip Hop Awards, the Billboard Music Awards, the Country Music Awards, and more. He also has production designed the Kennedy Honors sets, the Al Pacino and George Clooney American Cinematheque tributes, and so many more. He's won 3 Emmys, 2 Art Directors Guild, and has 26 nominations. Sometimes he's up against himself. That's happened more than once. So I knew that he did all these shows, but then when I really started to research the performances and the staging and everything that he has to design for these shows, it's incredible. And yes, he has prep time, but sometimes he doesn't, as he'll explain. But all of these moving parts and coordinating the artists and the lighting, it's insane. It's live. It's crazy. So just some of the amazing performances that he has designed for. Not only has he gotten to see these people perform, but he's designed for them. Pavarotti, Whitney Houston, Santana, Elton John, Madonna multiple times, Alicia Keys, the U2, Prince and Beyonce when they did the duet, the White Stripes, Adele, Foo Fighters, Sting, James Brown, Stevie Wonder, Brian Wilson, Amy Winehouse, John Fogerty, John Legend, John Mayer, Bocelli, Lady Gaga, Mick Jagger, Barbra Streisand, and those are just the people I like. I mean, there are tons more. Even for the Kennedy Center honors that he did twice, I mean, they involve Steve Martin, Diana Ross, Scorsese, Brian Wilson, Paul McCartney, and Oprah Winfrey. I mean, it's incredible the amount of, I don't know. I'm just blown away. I really enjoyed this. It's a fascinating interview to me because I really learned a lot from him, because I know that we're all in this, but sometimes you don't know how these other shows really work, and it's just fascinating. We talk about all of his shows and what some of the design challenges for these live shows might be in this coronavirus phase in the next year or so. So in fact, the BET Awards are on this Sunday, June 28th, so I'm very intrigued to see what the design of it is going to be and how they play all of this. It's going to be interesting. He's amazingly talented and just a super nice guy. So I hope you enjoy. Yeah, I love doing puzzles.
I'm going to the office now, just trying to do some work and get some normalcy.
Do you have projects right now that you're prepping?
Well, yeah, they moved ACMs to September, and if it does happen, it's in 3 venues without a live audience, or potentially without a live audience. They don't know yet, but you know, it's feeling like it might well not have an audience. I mean, given what we're in now. But yeah, working on redesigning that since they canceled the Vegas show and we can't really use the existing set, so it will be new scenery for Nashville in 3 different venues.
Oh wow! And do they give you like the floor plans and everything of the venues, or do you have to go survey that?
Well, we can't right now. We can't survey it. I suppose now we could. 2 weeks ago, when they announced it and told us the venues, the idea of traveling wasn't really like on anyone's radar. So right. We've interfaced with every venue: the Bluebird Cafe, the Ryman, and Grand Ole Opry. So yeah, we've gotten drawings from them. Kristen, the art director's gotten drawings, and had conversations. So we're doing the best we can. Normally, yes, we would be there to figure out not so much the on-stage measurements, but how the flow of the show will work backstage, because that's the trickiest part of our show. So we can't do that right now. So it's just phone conversations. I wish we could. It would be very nice to be able to go.
Well, yeah.
But,
I mean, especially if
right
you're doing 3 different ones. I mean, and keeping that all straight and
right?
Jesus.
Right? All that stuff.
so then it's not like you're doing one show. Then you're kind of doing 3 shows under one.
Yeah, they are. They're just splitting up the 16 performances kind of into thirds.
Wow.
Or 16 or more. I think there's normally 20 to 22 on the show when we're in Vegas, but we'll see how many they actually have. But part of the reason was thinking, well, most of the artists are in Nashville, so there's a comfort level that they can, leave their house in their own car, drive to the venue, of course, be supported safely when they're at the venue, and then turn around and leave. So,
God, oh my God, the logistics that all of this is going to cause all of us is insane, really.
Yeah, you think art department's tricky. Think about travel of the whole staff and hotels and all. It just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah,
how it's going to work. But thank goodness there are other people.
Well, when you were saying your backstage stuff, I never thought of wow, you really are doing a whole dance back there of scenery and juggling all that, and you basically have the time of a commercial break, right?
Yeah, typically, which is, historically, I think in 2008, we left a single stage performance and created a double stage when we were in Vegas. That eased it up because as one side's performing, of course, you can then change out the other performance area. Or if you have a performance in the audience on a satellite stage, it gives you more time. But it's a huge dance backstage. You're right. It's a dance during the process, because when we begin the process with creative, coming up with creative looks for each performance, we're not thinking about, they're on stage right, they're on stage left, because the script or the sketch, the rundown hasn't been created. So we'll render them on either side of the stage. We don't know which side they're going to be on. We'll know if it's out in the audience, because that's a different look than if it's a performance area. And then as we get into the producers really needing to lay the show out and who they want at the top of 1 hour or at the end of another hour, how we can make that work. So there's a huge do-si-do there. And then once kind of we've established what's happening, stage right, performance, stage left, out in the house, then I'll flip the sketches or redo the sketches depending on if that initial rendering that was approved creatively is on the other side of the stage.
Oh my God.
And sometimes it's the producers say, well, no, we have to have Miranda Lambert at the top of this hour, but after that we have this. And we'll say, well, scenically, the weight load, we can't support all these looks on one side of the stage, so we have to divide them up. So we have to pick one side, and you have to adjust the rundown depending. And we try to get it all so it works into fit all the puzzle pieces together. And normally, eventually it does, but there's a lot of back and forth.
I mean, you must pray for long songs, like A November Rain or something. I mean, you must...
Yeah, really?
Or
please, can this song be a little longer?
Yeah. Or I was looking at that one Grammy performance with Timberlake and Jay-Z, Suit and Tie, and then now it's a lot of it is always sort of that medley, but you still have to the stage still transforms in some way, so it's not like it's even a breather or anything. It's like you don't even get a break in the middle there.
Right, and never mind that sometimes on the shows like Grammys and ACMs, we'll go to a full stage performance where both sides of the stage are opened up, and they perform kind of in the award area. And then that is, to come out of that, bring in our fly walls to hide it, and then have to resume the pattern of the show is tricky. So usually it's a satellite performance and an award that will buy us, 10 minutes. And then sometimes the scenery for that one is pulled. So much of our scenery is lined up in hallways, but at Grammys, it goes literally 600 feet through the Staples Arena, up the loading ramp for deliveries, and then out into a parking structure into the convention center. So, sometimes it can be an eighth of a mile push of a drum riser or a wall that has to be tipped up or a series of walls. So, yeah, we're spread out. Same way in Vegas. There's a parking lot structure behind the MGM Grand Garden Arena that's maybe 400 feet away, and so much of our set's stored there. So sometimes it's like, well, we need to pull this out 3 minutes into this performance to get it near the stage so that we can get it up in time. But the crews, they've done it so many times, and they're so well honed. They figure it out. They really do.
The only thing that I can relate to this is I worked on Wheel of Fortune, and we would go on remote twice a year, and to like these different venues like Dallas or Miami and everything, and we would get the vector files of these huge arenas or convention center or whatever they were going to shoot, and then plop in the like little set and the wheel. And there's
big sets.
They are. I mean, they do. Look, they're big for Wheel of Fortune, but that's it. You know what I mean? Like, you design that Dallas skyline, which is great and all, but like that's your set. You're not like this award show or live performances, and it's set. But that's the only thing I can remember is it was a huge undertaking for Wheel of Fortune. Like, they would spend like $1 million to like take their whole crew to Dallas for for 2 weeks. I mean, I think they would tape like 2 weeks of shows, which is 2 days of filming because they do 5 a day. So it's not like, I don't know if it was worth it. But when you have to go, you were saying like Vegas is one, and then Nashville, and then LA, and then like the Soul Train Awards, are they in Detroit?
Soul Train Awards have been the last 4 years, I think, have been at the Orleans Arena in Vegas.
Oh wow!
And it's a single stage performance with a house band. So, and we've broken it up a little bit. Sometimes the performances will run into the presenter area and the award acceptance area, but typically that one scenically is a little less heavy for individual performances. We try to do as much as we can, but there is kind of a set house band, and then we'll do things downstage. That arena is nice. It's clean. It's clean and a lot of access, a lot of easy access.
There you go. I was wondering, when your career started to really gear towards live music, did you start to like learn more about instruments and like sounds, and like I mean, I know that you have to have some interaction with sound, and did you get into that at all, or is it more like the sound adjusts more to the set?
No, we need to really, it's besides enjoying the music and listening to it during the process as we get performances are confirmed, and it might be this song or this song, listening to it for creative inspiration is always wonderful. Mm-hmm. But technically, really no, what we came up really, I started as an art director, worked for a production designer, Robert Keane, who was amazing, and I was at Disney Live Entertainment for a brief time prior to that when I first moved here. And I came in like a deer in the headlights to award shows and music shows. I didn't know I didn't know, the things like the flooring that when I went to interview with Bob, things like the flooring, when I walked on stage, it was this gloss colored floor, and I couldn't even wrap my head around what that was. I had so many questions, like, what is this? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, you're using steel. Steel's amazing. My theater background, we didn't use steel. That wasn't really my world. But as I learned from him, and continued on. Like when you get into band performances and you get a or performances and you get a band plot, usually from the artist, we learn sizes. So it becomes very technical. We know that unless otherwise specified from a particular group, drum riser is usually 8 foot by 8 foot, and it's usually taller than the keys, and the keys are usually to the right or left, and a typical 4 pieces: drums, keys, bass, guitar. But then when we get into orchestras, of course, there's the kind of the guide when you think of an orchestra. It's huge and the strings are divided. But in television, sometimes there's a little bit of leeway in that, where if we want to design it to a particular layout on stage to make it a little more exciting, like orchestras typically aren't on levels. At least the strings are all kind of flat on the ground. But of course, we want people to be seen when we're on television, and we want cameras to see people and to see the depth, which you don't really get when everyone's on the same level. So they make allowances for us, and we adjust as needed. There's some things like steel guitar pedal that I've learned through the Country Music Awards, and then hip hop. I've learned DJ. So there are some things that carry over depending on the genre of music that we do or the typical award show. But I even find now that even some of that's merging. But typically it's technical, like, oh, it's a 6-piece band. Oh, we need 3 8x8 risers. Oh, it's U2. Their drummer needs a 12 by 12 minimum. So that's how we work that out. And then, of course, that's our space allotment backstage of how much room we need for this band, for this band, for this band.
Because, like, Lady Gaga's drummer's not using the same drummer as Carrie Underwood or something. Like, I'm sure they have to switch. You got to switch out all instruments, drum kit, everything, every performance. Even if it's on, either side of the stage, you're still swapping that out for their performances.
Correct, right. Every drum riser for every act is their own drum riser.
Wow.
Every key riser is their own key riser. So we'll sometimes have kind of in the queue in the hallways and into a parking structure or a storage area, we'll have 60, 70 rolling risers. And typically you wouldn't have everyone on a riser in a reel, like if you were going to a concert or something, but because everything on these music shows needs to roll in and roll out, and there's a certain clearance for the caster and an angle of a ramp that you need to get up onto the stage, and you can't exceed certain things, or things belly out as they're coming up the ramp. It's a lot of rolling, and a lot of risers.
And with like the Billboard Music Awards or the Grammys or hip hop, like, what is your interaction with the performers? Or is it more of their idea that you're designing for, or do they have some people have their own designs they come in with?
Well, it's interesting through my career and coming up through Bob. Typically, we would, way back when, for these shows, we would design act looks for the we call them act looks, but performance looks. We would send a sketch out. They would love it, hate it, have adjustments, and we would fix it. But we had a lot of say in that. As we've evolved in these award shows, a lot of artists now are coming in with creative directors. Not every one of them, and certainly I would say 50% of the performances we have our hand in all of them, because more likely than not we'll be creating, even if they have a vision, we'll create the vision because we need to adjust it to be able to fit on our stage.
Right.
And they don't, which is great, they don't have to suffer through the parameters of our set. Initially, creatively, they'll come in with an idea, and then we go, well, this is great, but we have to do this, or we can't fly this unit, or we can't fly these chandeliers because they're too heavy, or something like that. So how about this? So we go back and forth.
Or fly Madonna, like.
or fly Madonna. And yeah, exactly. Or bring in a car that transforms on stage.
Or an egg.
But yeah, so we still get some creative freedom with acts, but there are certain acts that like to bring creative directors, and it's actually It's not that it helps our load, because we certainly have to be responsible for every act that comes on, every performance and the scenery for that. And we have to interact whether they're building it or we're building it. But it does bring in fresh ideas for each performance. And it's nice. Most of the interactions are great. I say most. I think they all end up being great. It's just the process with each, with the acts that do this are all a little different. But it does certainly lend variety to the evening, which is, to an evening show, which is good. You want to get as many different looks, and you want the basic set to be able to, within a performance, adapt and kind of chameleon-like adjust for the performance, and yet still be able to hold its own when you're not in a performance.
Well, I think that's your biggest challenge of you're designing this overall set, then has to transform, 16, 20 times, but still maintain its own design. I mean, it's an incredible feat. And how, I know this is a long question, but so how long do you have, if you start, I'm going to do the Grammys, and then how long do you really have when they come in and say, hey, Madonna wants to fly away? Is that the last week? Right. Like something like that. You might have all this prep time, but in reality, when all these little vignettes come in, you can't anticipate 6 months from now what song someone's going to sing, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's really about when you're designing a set is you need to figure out the flow of the show, not just the awards, but the performance areas. How many are there going to be? Will there be one in an audience? Will there be two? Will some be remotes? But for the main set, you really want to create a set that makes a statement in a wide shot, which you see maybe a dozen times in an evening if you're lucky, sometimes more depending on the show. But you want that statement in the wide shot, and then immediately you're in close-up. So right. you design that award area to be good in the close-up background, which a lot of times now is LED because it's so flexible. You want some architecture in there, and then you need the performance areas to be strong enough to support an act with strong LED or something that can go away and become a lighting look, or something that can be more theatrical and more organic, like painted drops we've done before. So you design those performance areas to be as flexible as possible for whatever performances come. And then you're into, 6 weeks before the show. And this is kind of averaging all the different award shows I do, but you get about 6 weeks out, you start to get a sense when nominees come out of who might be performing on the show, and then you begin to get talent list of who is actually confirmed, but they don't know the song, and then you get the song, and so maybe you're 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks out, and then you start this journey with the people that you know that are going to be on, and every act will come to the show kind of at a different schedule, but they're all seasoned enough to know that they want to get their act together, their creative together, and then we just start working on them one after the other as they come in. We'll have a call. I'll do a creative design. I'll try to get it off in the next day. Get the model built, get it rendered, and then get that off. So you know that at one point you can at least cross that off your list. Well, then the next one comes in. And we're fortunate enough that sometimes we'll have 3 weeks to do, let's say, a Taylor Swift performance that's got a lot of I don't want to say gags, but a lot of effects, a lot of movement. Sometimes they do come in late, and then your only hope is that you've done enough ahead of time with the other acts that then you have time to put towards that. And then we'll, of course, bring in additional art department members as needed, depending on the workload. It's a little tricky because it's such a niche area in a way that there's a lot of language that you would hope that you don't have to teach someone that world. But when you're into a singular performance, and if we have to bring in a special art director, say for Taylor Swift or Adele or Lizzo, that there's enough they know enough that they're pretty quick to learn, because they really don't have to know the whole show. They just have to know that, depending on the venue, sometimes, like for Grammys, our clearance to get in any piece of scenery into that room other than flying is 8 feet. We have 8 feet at 8 foot 3 inches. So anything taller has got to be built to roll in on its side, which means
now don't you think to yourself, who the hell designed this venue that gave me this restriction? Like, take the roof off, or like there should be something.
The funny thing is, they're designed for a Zamboni. It's like, where will a Zamboni fit?
Yeah.
Or what's the biggest piece of equipment they think for a sporting event they need to get in? Or
but
you're right.
So
there are some venues. Staples is. It's kind of cool that we've been able, and I do like the detective work. I mean, there's a part of me that does like the detective work of, this wall's 14 feet, but let's lay it on its back. Will it make the turn? Will it go up the ramp? I do like that, but I'll tell you, when we're in a space where we can roll in something that doesn't have to be flipped or done like Broadway style, hanging backstage, if the venue was supported on motors, like we've done that before, where they just hang scenery in the back and they lower it in right before the performance and roll it on. But I do really like venues where you don't have that height restriction. They become heaven.
It's just another element to worry about when you're trying to do 25 other things at the same time.
Right.
I mean,
right.
That is insane.
Oh, we've had our evenings of wine at 7 p.m. There's always the one show where, like, you know what? Let's just stop and have a glass of wine, and we pull the wine out.
Oh my God! So
dust off the glasses and have some wine at the office, which is always feels so much better afterwards.
Do you go to the when it's recorded, well, when it's live? Would you go? Are you there? Are you like, okay, I've because a lot of times, like with everyone, you sort of like let it. All right, I gotta let it go, and it is what it is, and I'm off.
Right. No, I'm typically, I mean, for the most part, I'm sitting in the truck, in the production truck, behind the director, just kind of watching. There's not really anything I can do at that point. But if something does come up where I'm in texting conversations, we usually set up an art department text where we'll go back and forth, and we share a Google Doc where we have notes, and everyone will, put that in. But typically during a live show, I'm sitting in the truck, and then if a drapery needs to be adjusted a little bit and the crew is comfortable with that, which we've worked with so much of our crew, they're okay with me like adjusting the base of a curtain or something, it's fine. I'll leave the truck.
Yeah.
And run
out up shit, on stage. Ryan's left the truck.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing you can really, it's more of just being
right?
like being a presence in there, but there's nothing really, I mean, when you're live, that's, you do what you can do. We had 1 year when we had darn it, I've done so many performances. Chandelier. Who sings Chandelier?
Oh, Sia.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Sia. Yeah, I wanted to say SZA, and I knew that wasn't right.
Did you ever think in your life you'd get the word SZA and Sia and Lizzo in the same conversation?
No. Or Khalid and DJ Khaled.
Yeah, DJ Khaled.
Run together.
Yeah.
But there was it was a full set. It was
beautiful.
Yeah, tenement hallway, and then she was in kind of photographer studio, and we had Jason Howard came in and art directed it, and all that. Every piece of dressing on that room, and there had to be thousands of pieces of stuff, was all screwed together because it all tipped 90 degrees to roll up. So everything was locked in place. You could have turned it upside down and nothing would have moved. But during the live show, one of the walls that was rolling in, dead center in the back, had a lot of hanging bulbs and a lot of other things. It crashed into one of the supports at Staples Center's, a column. When they're rolling it in, because it's very frenetic. And, the crew tries to be safe, all the time, but every once in a while something hits. And of course, this hit, it broke that center section completely off. They had to pull it all off and then roll it all up, and we quickly unscrewed some things and redressed that area a little bit.
God, thank God you had that
everyone
time.
was sad. Yeah, everyone was really sad, but it just happens because it's a live event. And thankfully, 85% of the set was as we did in rehearsal, as we created. It's just sometimes it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
I mean, it's not like she was going to see it. She had a big wig over her head, didn't she?
Well, she's pretty amazing. She would come to the shop. Yeah, we set it up at a scene shop here in the Valley, and we set it up. We built it. She came out. She drove out to the shop. She walked it. She went and got GoPros and rehearsed on it, and they put hard walls around the entire set so that you couldn't see her. And she spent, I think, a couple days out there just getting used to the set, which was pretty amazing. Not every artist has the time or even the desire to do that, but the fact that she was so integrated in it. So she was emotionally very sad about what happened, but I think even she conceded when it was done because no one in the audience knew. The only people that really knew were us.
No one ever knows. No one's ever going to know. You know what I mean? Like, no one ever knows but you what's not there, what didn't get there.
Right.
But, yeah, no. I mean, that set is phenomenal. And that's, I mean, I was going to ask you specifically about that and these vignettes that you've done over the years, especially for the Grammys. I mean, first of all, the performances that you have seen are pretty legendary. Like, I mean, the Beyonce Prince one. Oh, I'm only picking up my favorites, but the Justin and Jay-Z. I mean, Madonna, Lady Gaga doing Bowie. You've seen such amazing performances, and that's just like modern day shit, and not even the like throwbacks of Stevie Wonder. And my God, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's true, and beyond just Grammys, my introduction. I mean, I grew up with parents that like country music, but I wasn't a huge fan. But just getting into Country Music Award, the Academy of Country Music Awards, and doing that show, and then hip hop, like my scope of music that I appreciate and really respect has changed so much. And sometimes, honestly, like some of my favorite performances, you would think that, like, scenically I have some favorite performances, but there are some, I should correct, because sometimes I have left the truck and watched performances, but usually I would say 80% of my time is in the truck. But when we did Adele, I think the year when she blew up, she was on the show. And she, this was prior to when she was out in the audience on the satellite stage, but she was over on our stage on one performance area. And I think we proposed a lot of different scenery, and we ended up just doing very simple custom risers where we did some lights, even lights right along the back, like this line of lights in a row. We did these risers raised that were completely open underneath. And then most people, on the underside of a platform, you wouldn't normally finish, but for some reason, I think that needs to be finished. So we did a kind of a gloss black finish on the back, on the underside. And that performance, I mean, it wasn't heavy scenery, but I was out in the audience for that one, and it was one of the first times I was at a show where literally everyone was holding their breath and you couldn't hear anything. And I've heard, the expression, you could hear a pin drop. Well, that was the first time I'd ever experienced it, where no one talked the entire performance. They were just staring, not breathing at Adele singing. And just that row of lights glowing. And then sometimes the Steadicam, or the handhelds down in the mosh pit in front where we have guests come in and stand for energy, shooting up. You saw that glint, that reflection just off the lighting underneath the platform. And then it was so pure and so simple.
But I think that's one that goes to you responding from the performance and designing around it so specifically that the simplicity of it makes it more powerful. that
Yeah.
you're focused so much on her incredible voice that I don't know, at some point you can't compare. You can't, anything you're going to put
Right.
up, people are just enthralled with that voice.
Yeah, and it's like, what do you need? Like, we don't need to have a set around here. We don't need LED content running fast or slow paced through the screens. Just make it pure.
God.
And so much of that, which is great. I mean, most of our teams are tight because between art department, lighting department, and screen department, all of us need to work together. And it's really important to get a vision across that plays well and looks merged together, so that everything that you see on camera comes together nicely. And even with the director, I mean, Lou Horwitz on Grammys he really studies the performances and listens to the music and looks at the scenery and will say, you know what, I really want to come in from the side on a jib here. Can we get some dressing for Camila Cabello when we did that 2-story apartment that Jason Sherwood, who is from New York, he was the creative director on that. But can we get some scenery over here so I can have a cut-in piece? I'm like, yeah. But even with lighting, I mean, so much, all our creative, it's not just one department in our world. Lighting plays a huge role in it. And sometimes even beyond scenery, saying, this should just be a lighting look. This doesn't need to be scenery. Let's create architecture with lighting.
Right, because I mean, when you used to go to concerts, it was a band and some great lighting.
Right.
I mean, especially like a Bon Jovi or rock and roll or something. I mean, that's all that was up there. A couple pyrotechnics, and that was a great show. So.
Yeah, and yes, it was, and it meant people's expectations.
Yeah.
And now the bar, I mean, expectations are crazy now for concerts. Like,
oh my God, it's insane. I mean, look at like Pink. I think she rose that bar a lot. And then the costume changes and how many dancers and the set moves, and then they're floating out over the audience. It's crazy what concerts get into. And then you have that also in your shows. I mean, it's crazy, the bar. It's too high, probably. So
well, it's exciting. I mean, it's wonderful that scenery's embraced and the lighting is, ever since the first moving light started, it changed that world forever. And into television and everything. And the variety of new lighting that comes out, and lasers that come out, effects that come out, and even scenery, like the different surfaces that are now being, I hate
textures
to say it,
that you can use and light off of, and like
oh,
that
yeah.
Carrie Underwood dress that was all like projected onto her and then like onto the screens you had behind it. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah,
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
Yeah, and so pure. Like when you
Yeah.
get down to it, it's technically very complicated. Takes a while to work out, but the result is so pure and so clean that you just get to marvel at that and the singing, and all it does is support, and that's all we want to do is support the performance. Really, it's all about supporting performances.
And that was like you can't take your eyes off of those graphics that are going on her, but yet you're listening to this voice coming out of this little woman. It's like incredible. Right. And then the butterflies just explode. It's like, it's such a powerful image. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. And all inspired by her voice in the song, really.
So
that's the emotional journey right there.
So was that, like, how did the graphics come out of that? Was that like her thought of like butterflies, or like, I don't know, like, was that?
I'm thinking back at the time. I believe Raj Kapoor was on board with Carrie at that time. He's since actually moved into award shows, and he's a producer now, a creative producer, and does beautiful work. But that was in kind of early stages of, I think, not projection so much, but the idea of projecting onto a surface that wasn't just a screen. And I think he brought the initial idea and had the content created for that dress. And then I think we had to work with stylists in terms of like, getting that exact dress made. But he had that vision. And then, so much of our content, Drew Finley is a good screen designer, and regardless of whether it's LED or projection, that person like Drew, like Raj, or people are creating that content for the show.
But at first you had that like gauzy drapery behind her, and then that lifted up, right? Am I going crazy? There was like curtains of like gauze.
Yeah, I'll tell you, some of these do meld together.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember specifically the dress. I would actually have to look it up to see. There may have been a drape. Yeah, there may have been a drape behind her. I mean,
well,
some of the nice.
It was.
Yeah.
I think it was like you created this, like you're just looking at her, and then this like gauzy drape sort of goes away, and then it's sort of then it expands onto like other screens and everything, and just made it so huge. Like taking advantage of that space that you had in this performance was just so gorgeous.
Yeah. No, I remember now what you're. Yeah. It's interesting. Like some we can choose. Oops, excuse me.
Let's read a book.
Sorry about that.
Are you taking a master class while we're doing this?
I'm actually doing 3 and 3, and I'll just turn the volume on depending on the one I'm
Yeah.
actually.
I think everyone right now is doing master classes.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. Like there is. It keeps all going back to the song, but for her, the idea of it growing beyond her dress was really beautiful. And then we'll have some performances where, like on a satellite stage, it's just like Lady Gaga with her wings on the Grammys, draped over a piano, and that's all that needs.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, that's what excites me so much about this world, is that all the statements being made on one show, and that you're designing a statement overall for the show that really drives the idea of the show. But then within that world that you create, you get to create and make so many different statements. Even within country music, I mean, it's all like country music, but some of it's kind of hip hop.
Oh, yeah.
Or traditional country.
The dancers that you have to accommodate, and I mean, all of the musicians, like you were saying, like the orchestras, like, oh, it's insane. There's 2 things I want to ask you about, though, just Grammy specific. Number 1, did you have to design specific stuff for the Muppets when CeeLo Green and Gwyneth Paltrow had that performance? Like, did the Muppets come in and have demands? Or, just requirements of like, well, we need all these, to hide the people. Was that hard?
Well, mainly it was what they required in their dressing room. Like the list was on and on. No, I'm kidding. They didn't seem to eat or drink anything.
And they left it a mess.
Yeah. No, it was that one. I think I did 3 ideas. One was a Mars landing pad. The other was, I think, Egyptian. And there was a third one, like 3 ideas. They liked the idea of the Martian landscape with the rocket. Yeah. And then it was a lot of dialogue between the puppeteers. First of all, choosing the puppets that we'd want, that kind of fit. And then the second part was conversations with them, their specific needs on the area they required, and how much room they had, and when their hands go up. And then, lastly, it was, how do we hide them? Like, do we do, like, I think we did an inset with just like black velour behind one, and they were all in black to hide, I think, the 3 background singers.
Wow.
And then the other ones were usually behind walls. I remember on Kennedy Center Honors one year we had Kermit the Frog, Yo-Yo Ma. It was for Yo-Yo Ma, and I think Kermit the Frog came out. So we had to create a special podium and then design a wall that the puppeteer could be behind, and they sent us a very specific diagram of height and width, and then we just built off that. But I designed it into kind of that basic set of the Kennedy Center Honors.
It was so fun. That set is so much fun, and just looked like CeeLo and Gwyneth were having a good time with it, and just, I feel like that's a performance where people just smile the whole time, because it's fun, and the color is there, and it's a great song, and you got the Muppets, like,
Yeah.
I watched that like a couple times in this past week. It's like, oh, I really like this. I forgot about this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really joyous. I think
Yeah.
Outcast one year that I think 2004 Outcast was on, or five. They were joyous too, and that was pretty simple. It was again kind of a Martian landscape, but we
Like
built
Heya or something. Yeah.
yeah. We built a stainless steel teepee with I think some ports cut out of it. It was like a teepee that was a rocket, and that was enjoyable. But yeah, so much of it was the energy of the show, of the performance and the fun
Yeah.
that they had. And you're right, CeeLo and Gwyneth, that was a very fun, and you could tell it was infectious.
Yes. Yes. I now before because I want to ask about the Kennedy Center, but I have one last like musical question. Like, does Madonna let you do anything, or is it just like, all right, hands off for that, like, 8 minutes of the show, and that's what Madonna does what she wants to do? Because I think that's how it goes. I think that's how it probably is. Like,
Yeah, some people you need to accommodate, of course.
Yeah.
Like Madonna.
yeah,
And I believe that she had brought in a creative director the last time she was on, the last couple times she was on. I remember, and sometimes they've brought their things in. There was one, we had a limousine on stage. It was completely covered in mirror ball
oh, for
squares.
Dance Ball Confessions, right? Or Hang Up. Is it Hung Up? I think it was. I forget. No, I forget.
It might have been hung up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, working with them in terms of weight load of a real limo versus a fake limo, and how, what's the weight of it? All these things that are boring to other people that I enjoy is figuring out. But,
but that's the reality. That's the
yeah.
part of the design. Like, all right, now we got to figure this out. How are we going to do it? And that's what we're all struggling with.
Yeah, and Gorillaz, when she was on with Gorillaz and we did the Pepper's Ghost effect with her, we did a pre-tape with her so that she could appear with Gorillaz, and then she appears to go to the other side of the stage, and then she's actually on the other side of the stage when we come to her. That was, it really does depend on, it really depends on the performance in terms of like how much, but we try to do there are restrictions that we can't even control, like weight load up in the air, and you get to a point where you have a certain amount of weight given what rigging is issued to engineering, and they've stamped, and we know our load, and we know that we can't hang that, or we can hang that, or if they want something, maybe it can be built in a lighter weight material or something like that. So we try to, of course, work with every act that comes in the best we can. Just sometimes it's physically impossible, beyond our control.
Do you have such demanding people on the Kennedy Center honors, or is it pretty chill? I would think it would be pretty chill.
Well, I haven't designed that. I left the show of my choice maybe 6 years ago. I was back when the Stevens were doing it, and it was that very stately gray set. But no, that was really when I did it was the producer would create it because they were being honored. It depended. Certain people would like to know what they were doing. Like for Oprah, I believe she wanted to kind of get a basic outline of what her performance was when she was honored. Some people don't care. Mm-hmm. Some people being honored say, this is really important. This is really important to me. They didn't tell the producers what to do, but they would say, it'd be really nice if this could happen, or I love this. And then the producers would just kind of go from there. But the years I did it, we did no LED. So what I did love about that show, it was my only, because I have theater roots, it was in an opera house.
Mm-hmm.
The cameras were hidden. It was very much as much for the audience as it was for the audience at home, the TV audience. So it was designed very much theatrically. So I did get back to my theatrical roots, and which was wonderful. Like, okay, we're on a stage. We have wings. We have a set of fly lines. What are we doing for this? And then how do we do-si-do all this scenery to make sure that it all works for what every performance needs? And then our basic set. our basic set needs a certain amount of, requirements to make that work for all the, when people would walk out and give their story about the NRE. But I did love that show. I loved that we built real scenery.
I love that show. I have always been a fan of, like, these are like the little, like, gems in our American culture, and I always thought it's a very special show and a really special honor. I always thought so. I have enjoyed that.
Yeah, it feels rooted. Rooted in the American psyche for people that like that kind of show, and there's a history with it, and there's an emotional response because it's not just a singular performance. It really is honoring someone's career and someone's passion, which I did love about that. And I love Steve Bass took it over. Alana Billingsley designed it for, I think, 3 years using the previous set. But then when it was revamped, Steve Bass did it. And I think his set's beautiful, too. It's very clean and
it's always been a very elegant up sort of, show.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It also shows how you can package a show visually, too. Mm-hmm. Because between my designing Alana and Steve, there's been different statements visually for the set, but they all kind of contain, like you said, some key ingredients. It's monumental, it's classic, it's totally supportive of performances, but it has a very regal, it's got a stature and a regal nature to it without being cold.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I unfortunately forgot way back when, because you have said that you had a theater background. Where did you study?
Carnegie Mellon.
Oh,
I went to undergrad at MU, Michigan State University, and then went to graduate school for 3 years in Pittsburgh, and it was, it really gave me. I think MSU provided to me the creative outlet to kind of be free with designing, but because we had a lot of different venues, not a lot of money, you had a vision, you figured it out, like most theaters do, and in a good way. But Carnegie Mellon really honed me a lot, honed me in terms of control, design control, and so much rendering style and just it was good. It was nice to have the freedom at Michigan State and then to have guidance, like really strong guidance.
You have so many peers that have gone there also, which is nice, and or must have been nice too, because people had gone there that are in our business, and if that's what you were pursuing at that time, I don't know yet, but
yeah, and it's really interesting. I mean, I have people a lot of people I've worked with came from Carnegie Mellon. Mm-hmm. Mine knew 10 years after I did, and now there are people that we're working with that are close to 20 years out from when I was at Carnegie Mellon, and that physically the building has changed, like where they teach classes. Mm-hmm. The faculty has changed, but there still is a seed there that it's really interesting, because the university that I went to was really not the university experience that people 20 years later, 20 years later went to. Yet they come out as well trained and as versed. So yeah, there's
something in that curriculum that really has a lot of talent that comes out of there, though. I mean, I have plenty of people I know that went there and are geniuses and super talented and just know their stuff. I'm jealous in a sense. I loved my college, but I always feel like, oh, they went to Carnegie Mellon. I'm like, whoa. Like,
it would be discipline. I think that's the word I missed before when I was comparing universities. It just said it's got a good discipline to it. Yeah.
And then did you come right to LA after you graduated?
No, I actually stayed on. I moved to Brooklyn and I was doing scene painting for a while, but then I got pulled back to Pittsburgh to work as a set decorator, which I had never done before, on 2 George Romero films. I worked with a professor at Carnegie Mellon who was the production designer, Cletus Anderson, who was amazing, and brought me in to do a remake of Night of the Living Dead. I think that was 92, maybe 91.
I saw that.
And then I went back to Brooklyn, but very quickly went back and did The Dark Half, which was a Stephen King movie, in 92 into 93. So, yeah, I was blessed to scary, honestly. I mean, this is the age before computers, before, graphic artists creating things and prop shops that you could rent from. Pittsburgh was... So my life basically for those 2 films was going to auctions out in the middle of nowhere and buying things for the show and making deals with antique stores.
Oh my God.
Furniture stores. I mean, it really was.
That's what gives, when you have to shop locally, it really helps in capturing what the vernacular really is there. So it's
true.
It's
yeah.
so helpful, but so hard at the same time because people don't really want to rent. They're very skeptic. They're very
Right.
They don't.
And it was the infancy of film there. They were just starting to do a lot of filming in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, it was pretty virgin territory in terms of films in a lot lot of ways. I learned a lot of respect for set decorators. Yeah.
I was going to say, you jumped out of that pretty quickly. You had two credits, and then you're like, nah, never mind. I'm going into awards and live performance.
Yeah. Well, coming out to LA was nice. I mean, I left soon after that to come out to LA, and then the work at Disney was amazing, and it was back when the park was smaller, and the entertainment division was in a trailer, but the people that just within this trailer, mobile home, basically work trailer, there was so much talent. It was amazing.
So what did you do? So when you moved out here, you started working at Disney?
Yeah, I interviewed around, but I wasn't in the union, and I really didn't have a lot of television contacts and things. So I did a bunch of interviews, and then one of them was down at Disneyland. I don't know I can't even remember who had suggested, but I went down and interviewed with the live entertainment division, and they did special events as well.
Oh, I see.
Interviewed, and I was actually working that afternoon, which was interesting.
Wow. They scooped you up.
Yeah, it was crazy. I'm like, he said, well, can you start? And I'm like, okay, sure. So, yeah, I did.
Oh, my gosh. That's awesome.
Stayed there for almost 18 months before Robert Keene's art director of many years was actually moving on, and he needed a position filled. And I don't even know how I got that. I think it was someone that knew someone through Disney suggested, and I interviewed, and my commute went from 37 minutes. No, well, I can't imagine what it would be now. Probably an hour to get down there back and forth. But it went from 40-minute drive to a 5-minute drive because he was in the valley. So it was. Oh my God! I started working for Bob Keene. It was amazing to get that time back, but also what he taught me.
Yeah, I'm sure invaluable.
Yeah.
And so then you started art directing, and then it looks like you art directed for 4 or 5 years, and then jumped into designing on your own.
No, I was with Bob almost, I think, 9 years. It was a long time, and I was comfortable there, and I did at the time enjoy art directing, but he passed suddenly in 2003, and of course everything was turned upside down then, not only for him but for his wife and everything. So I basically thought, what do I need to do? Well, if I want to continue this, I need to talk to the producers that I've worked with as an art director and say, are you willing to give me a chance? And I did. I made calls and I said, I know I can do this. I want to do this. Will you trust me?
And that's probably the smartest thing you did.
Fortunately,
I mean, personally reaching out to people, I mean, it's probably the smartest thing you could have done.
Yeah, I think so. I'll tell you, I was scared to death, but it put me. But yeah, their graciousness and willing to trust me, I think, was the biggest thing. And I felt like that's what I had to do. I really didn't know what else to do. It was my life, and this kind of live television events were what I knew. And at the time, they were also evolving. Like LED was becoming more popular. Like when Bob passed, we were doing projection, and that was a big thing at that time.
Right.
You know, rear projecting, and I remember panty slides, those huge slides we would do instead of before projectors were actually able to go on screens and kind of follow the shape of projection screen, scenic projection screens. We were doing these big panty projectors and all these huge slides the size of license plates that slid through, and that you would have to, it would turn off and then back on. But yeah, even in 2003, things were evolving, and LED was coming in. You know, and it still is evolving. But yeah, so one show led to another, and so I built up my world as a production designer,
and
which was wonderful.
You have like a rotation of about 6 or 7 shows a year at this point. I mean, I know you give and take, and you do a couple new things, and then but how do you keep up with like 6 live shows a year?
Well, it's a lot of, fortunately, the way they fall as the year lays itself out. As you know, the Golden Globes are in the beginning. You know, Grammys is 3 weeks after. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 4. So you just have to, you have to depend on your art department. You have to plan for very, during the times, I don't so much anymore, but I used to get up and start at 5 a.m. because the phone wouldn't ring for 3 hours. And that was when I could, the only time I could sit and be creative, where I wasn't taking notes or on a creative call. And that's when I did my sketches. So, it's just, if there is a show that overlaps with a load in, or I know there's going to be a lot of internal performances on a show, then I can't do that. But if I'm doing, like a Lexus Elite meeting, which I do a Lexus event, and I've done some other, outside of live television events. Yeah. As long as there's not a lot of scene changes, that you can get there for the second day of load-in and stay through the show, and your art director supports you and follows through with the scenery, and you visit the shop once or twice. You know that if it's a little bit of a lighter show in terms of what's required for the finished product, then it's okay. Like, you can do, I can do this Lexus meeting on the tails, the shirt tail of a larger multi-act show, because it's not the scale of that. But if there's shows that are big, that are multi-act, that are overlapping, I can't do it out of work ethic, and I can't. Yeah. I mean, I don't want anything to happen to the show, and I certainly don't want the people's opinion of me to think that I've spread myself too thin.
Plus, you've surrounded yourself with, I'm sure, an amazing creative team that you trust and are able to, walk away for a minute and able to, go away for an hour or so, and not, nothing's going to break.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the team, because when you wear an art director hat for the years I did, it was very hard to pull out of that, right, and design the show. And I did allow myself the freedom to design and have that creativity, but I also was kind of in the back of my mind art directing it. And the truth is, I don't need to be doing that. If I wanted to do that, I could. But there are people that are far better than me that I've learned that are there, that have that passion and are there to support. And so, yes, I've learned to lean on, and actually been saved many a time by very talented people. Yeah, right. And sometimes saved by the lighting department. Sometimes saved by
rarely. I'm rarely saved by the lighting department. I'm usually scrambling because of the lighting department. But I love them because they light my shit. But no. But yeah, no. We're all spokes in that wheel, and it's you got to be strong for each other.
Yeah, and there can be disagreements. I mean, we've certainly had our share of, I wouldn't say yelling matches, but very terse dialogue about something. But it irons itself out. It's all part of the job. as much as the highs.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The other aspect of your live shows that you do is the Golden Globes. Do you enjoy? Is that like, oh, Golden Globes, like one stage? What am I going to do? Like, are you bored?
Well, it is one of my favorite shows, and it presents a huge number of challenges, of course. And
it's a small room.
It's a tiny
room.
Stage,
I mean,
13-foot ceilings.
Until I was ever in that room, I never, even when the first time I ever went into that room, I was like, no, this isn't it. There's like another room. There's like another room. This is like the Bobo room that they let the Art Directors Guild into. Like, the real room isn't.
I know, when you walk in, it's nothing like the cameras.
No.
Lou directs it, his camera shots. It looks, it doesn't look huge, but it looks far bigger on camera in a wide shot and even a close-up than it does when you're in that room.
Yeah.
It is amazing what a camera does for that room. But yeah, I love the challenge of that room. It's small. There's fire marshal issues. There's a lot of issues that we seem to work around, but it's an enjoyable challenge. It really is an enjoyable challenge. And you're right, there aren't scene changes throughout the evening.
Sometimes that's more pressure. Like, this is a set that has to accommodate all of these actors and tributes, and it has to, be fantastic yet be subtle next to them. I think that's your challenge, right?
And be rich and grand, but also, as you're saying, have make a statement, but then be able to subtly change, which we try to do with the backgrounds.
Yeah.
But there, I like it for the challenges, and I like it, to Clark Productions. Barry Edelman is the producer. I love working with him creatively on things, and there's a huge amount of respect there for me, and it's enjoyable. And
does the design of it, do you think who's going to host, does that influence you at all?
It does sometimes. We had to have Questlove on one year, which really, for Jimmy, which I think, or was it Seth? No, it was Jimmy, which did really alter our typical flow, because we only have maybe 20 feet of depth, and there's so many entrances you can do and so much masking you can do. But for other hosts, when Amy and Tina hosted it, I think maybe I tried to go a little more feminine with the set, a little curvier, maybe not so hard edged.
And that's this next year, right?
I think they were. Yeah, I think they. Yes,
I think they because the only reason I know that is I feel like the day after the Golden Globes, they announced next year's hosts as if they were like, yeah, we're done with Ricky Gervais, which I think is a mistake. But I feel like they announced it pretty early on, which was so odd to me. It's so weird. Really?
Yeah, the one thing I remember about Ricky was he needed the first 2 or 3 years he hosted, we had to in the podium we designed, because we design, I think, a new podium every year, depending on the host, if they want one. He needed a shelf for his beer, which I always think back and think, okay, so we had to find out the glass height, because we didn't want to do it too low, so we didn't lean over.
Hey, I don't blame him.
That's about the extent of scene changes that we do on that show.
God, I don't blame him.
The podium needs to be adjusted.
I like that you designed podiums, because having done a lot of shows with public speakers and government, I have used every podium in town at least 3 times. And or have had podiums built.
We all know them well. Modern Props has this one.
Modern, advanced, Uni. You can't trust Uni, can't trust Warner Bros. And then I've had them made. I go to displaytogo.com is also my friend. I've done Amazon. I know where to get a podium.
Display to Go.
Yeah, Display to Go is good. They got some good stuff, if ever. But their shipping's slow. But podiums are my thing, I would have to say.
Yeah.
But it's true. But I think that there's an opportunity to incorporate the podium into your set. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, and you want to have a little bit of control. Like, as we all know, we want to see what people are wearing on the Golden Globe. So the podium can't be solid, and it could be plexi, but if we can do a thin metal frame that is open so we can actually see people. And then, honestly, it's our role to say when a producer says, well, so-and-so wants a podium, we say, well, do they really need a podium? Because do you really want to block, even if it's kind of see-through, do you really want to block this beautiful gown when it walks on stage?
Well, I think that microphone that comes up off the floor to the specific height is always the best option.
Oh, yeah, and that works great. But if there's like an artist that says, if I win, I would like a podium brought out to hold my trophy, we're like, well, can there be an alternate? Like, can Miss Golden Globe hold it?
I hope you don't
Mr.
win.
Golden Globe hold it? Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say it's them so much as the producer, just because everyone wants to think. We have to think about things like, is anyone coming in a wheelchair?
Right.
Because that room, being well designed for, of course, handicap access, it isn't that easy sometimes to get onto that stage, given its scale in our set. So there's that. There's the podium. There's all those little things that I think producers try to think of. And I mean, with coronavirus and what may happen with the beginning of next year's shows, I'm sure there'll be dialogue on that. Like,
well, yeah. I mean, so what do you think? I mean, you're already taking design elements and reworking for the Country Music Awards. Do you think that'll have an impact, though, like on the performances? Don't you think the thriving off of, and like they're going to announce a winner and there's no one there to applaud? Isn't it? I mean,
I don't know. I think every show right now is attempting to do the best it can given the circumstances. Mm-hmm. But I do know that there's going to be that coronavirus fatigue that's already happening. We're already seeing it. I think people are getting that corona fatigue with Zoom calls and all that.
We're not even back to work and we're all tired of it already.
Right. And right now it really is the only way in a lot of ways to communicate. But I think producers will start to think about, well, what is the award show format for next year if this is in place or if this isn't in place. But then how do we create that live energy without an audience if that becomes a necessity to not have an audience or a requirement to not have an audience? And I don't know that's answered, but I do think we're already seeing evolutions of that with The Voice, and it'll be interesting to see and to think about it. We haven't gotten there yet, but I'm sure a lot of designers and a lot of producers are going to be thinking about, well, what is the thing that will be happening in 6 to 8 months? Yeah. What is the look? If it's not this, what is the look? Given we've already begun our history of what the coronavirus has impacted and how people are solving it, but what is going to be a good idea in January, February, March? Lord knows how long.
Yeah, I don't know who'd want to chance it until there's a vaccine, really. I don't know who'd want to...
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
It's the producers... we've been on, and I'm sure you have too, a lot of calls with... Like, I've been on calls with producers where they're trying to figure out every scenario. Well, what if we have an audience? What if we don't have an audience? But then there's the layering of, like, is talent comfortable walking into an arena?
Right.
Is talent comfortable walking on stage?
I think it's all going to be dominated by actors and SAG and all that. And it should be, because, hey man, they get sick, we're not working. I mean, that's it. And they have that power, and good for them, and I hope they use their power for good, but, like, that's just the reality of it. We could all walk around in hazmat suits, but, Carrie Underwood gets a sniffle, and we're done. Like,
yeah, totally. And then, no one's going to tune in to watch a really cool set with lighting and video or a beautifully decorated interior without talent walking around.
No.
We always will be, and we always have been and always will be support.
For
support.
And I'm glad to be it, but, it's... I think it's an interesting thing when you start thinking about, especially award shows, and how will people win? And, is it, I feel like it was way back in like the first Academy Awards when it was really like small and not as popular. And I think they just read him off. I think that's how it was. I don't even know if they televised him or whatever, but I think that they just read him off. And then I think then they started to let people come up and give speeches. But at first, I think it was like Bob Hope, and he was just reading off names. And everybody clapped, and then, all right, next. And here's a performance, and I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. There's been an evolution just like of the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
In terms of how award shows are staged and run. And weren't they just announced via radio for
radio.
Time? Like,
yeah.
So-and-so has won.
Yeah.
I think I saw that on the series Hollywood.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I didn't get up to that episode.
Oh.
I gave up. I don't know. No, you're not spoiling anything. I gave up.
Oh, you gave up. Okay.
Yeah. I did 3 episodes, and then I'm like, it's really pretty, and I love the design of it, and I think they did a great job. The story of it didn't keep me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think visually it was very rich.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of work put into that.
Oh, my God, yeah. I kept going, oh, my God, are they in another location? They're in another location?
I know.
Like, I just find it crazy in the amount of bodies, like so many extras. It was kind of blew my mind.
Well, I think that's our big thing in TV is locations and extras. I don't think that will.
Yeah.
I think those will be toned down to the bare minimum, and maybe it'll be CGI extras in the back, or I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it.
Yeah, and I think even some shows like The Voice and The Masked Singer, I think they're doing virtual reality and green screens now as a temporary kind of filler.
Yeah.
But yeah, without that human component, I'm just, I'm not sure. And I agree. I just wonder, you're right. Maybe it is red at some point. Maybe it is kind of what do they say? Everything old is new again.
Yeah.
Maybe they go back to.
Yeah. Make it fun. Make it work. That's basically what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
But it's definitely a design challenge. It's like a design physical challenge
totally.
Here.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, we're all here to support whatever the vision is.
Yeah.
And to help with that, even with the creative process of how that happens.
Yeah. It's a new design project. That's all. It's a new 8-foot ceiling.
The new Zamboni entrance.
Yeah. Here's your Zamboni.
Here's your Zamboni.
So you're working? What are you up to?
Yeah, I'm working on some renderings now for ACM Awards in Nashville. And there's initial talks, BET Awards, which is at the end of June, about the possibility of some studio work or augmented reality work or virtual work. We're just not sure. So the invitations to talent have gone out. And I think, as we do the weeks ahead of time, we'll be figuring out what the best scenario is for the performances. But definitely it's not, we had a new set design for this year. We had kind of reached the life of the old set after a number of years at the Microsoft. And now had designed a new set, got it budgeted, but, it'll be a new set next year if we're in the Microsoft, knock on wood, end of June. And this year we're just going to see, it's all really talent dependent. It's like who wants to do a song from their house, who's in Atlanta that wants to go to their own studio and produce something, and then who is local that we can create a stage, like a smaller set to do a performance.
I will say that with all of these little shows doing doing little Zoom things and actors from their homes, there should be a designer hired for these things. And just as I'm going to pick on my own world here. They did the Parks and Rec reunion. I mean, they've hired props to get props, and they hired wardrobe. But they didn't hire a production designer. And I gotta say, I helped do Amy's home office, so I should get some sort of credit, because that was the background in her.
It was nice. I liked it. I loved love that episode.
I loved it too, and I cried with Candles in the Wind and all that with little Sebastian. But I think like some of them, there should have been some comments. Like, Anne, you could have done a little better. Like, I don't know, there should have been some sort of more opinion from a designer. And I wonder when they're doing some of these other projects where it's actors at home, if they're hiring designers or not, and and I don't know if they are. I think that's
even if I agree, even if a designer can't personally get to a venue or someone's house, whatever it is, the fact that you can have pictures sent via email, you can have the shot that they're going to be using, and then the comments, kind of that designer unifying it. I don't disagree with you. Yeah. Like move that, even if it's move that lamp over, move that palm over. Let's send up this screen.
Yeah, if like Chris and Anne are supposed to be in separate parts of the same house, can it look alike? Their backgrounds didn't match really at all. I mean, she had some horrible throw blanket or some shit. I don't know what she had, but like he looked like he lived in a very nice house, and she was like in the maid's quarters or something.
She was stuck in the remodeled basement.
It was like, oh, that doesn't,
locked down in the basement.
And then I gotta give props to like Chris Pratt, who was like out in his garage, and then I think that whole room he took all the books out. Like then I feel like, whoa, he went for it. So.
I like Chris. Yeah. Well, we have to remember that was what week of, we're barely 6 to 8 weeks. What are we in? We're 8 weeks in, right?
We're 8.
I think I flew back on March 13th on a Friday from Sunday Best. It was shut down the next day. And then basically from March 13th on, we were all hunkered down or close.
Yeah.
So, we're barely 2 months into a new world, and things like this popping up in the conversations we're having and things you're bringing up, I think that's the evolution of what might happen. And hopefully will happen is there'll be an evolution into the Zoom call in the background, I would hope.
And it's, there should be some design eye in that process. It shouldn't get like, just because it's just at the one wall set. It's still a set. It's still
right. It's still a supporting character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it is in that person's house.
Yeah. Go get a plant. Go get a
plant.
Get that blanket out of there.
What's growing out of your head?
Yeah, exactly.
Move that.
What is that crease behind? No. But yeah, but then you got to give them kudos, because I think they were like, and I'm not sure if it's just Parks, I'm picking on them, but they were sent like that little like lighting thing, and they all figured it out. So you got to give them props too that they figured shit out. So I mean, they all have to.
Yeah, I agree, and that they were willing to, and probably I bet it was interesting to them because it was a world that they know.
Yeah.
I mean, none of the actors have a lighting background, but they've been around it enough to know that, okay,
don't light up.
We can figure this out. But I don't disagree, and I think as we evolve this, hopefully it won't last. I don't know how long it's going to last, but in this evolution, I think that is the next step. Is like, okay, this is with us for a while.
Well, that's what made me think of it. Is actually when you said like if people are accepting awards at home. Like, not that you can hey, let me see everybody. All right, Madonna, see like everybody turn on your camera, let me see what's behind you. Like, I'm sure we can't do that, but Well,
I'm like, we should send, if everyone's at home, let's send them a Zoom image of a ballroom, and stick them at a table and send everyone a table with a flower arrangement in the foreground.
Yeah, there you go. So, there you go.
I mean, that's extreme, but I think there's a world where we will be doing that, where the art department will have an influence and lighting will have an influence into kind of creating virtual spaces within someone's living room.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so. Just a super sweet personality, so laid back and so talented. All of those moving parts that they have to... I mean, the Zamboni door and the 8-foot ceilings, but we all have our little restrictions sometimes. But I think just not knowing what people are going to perform, like 6 months out, you could make all the designs you want, but until they tell you Adele wants to sing this, I mean, you probably have an idea, but I don't know. That's a lot of pressure. I don't know. Because it's a lot of artists to make happy. I think that's a thing. It's, when in TV and film, I don't know if you're not making the actors happy. I feel like with this type of design, the performers need to feel comfortable in this, and sometimes it's so integrated that you have to coordinate everything together. So yeah, like the Muppets. I mean, yeah. So I'm so thankful that I got the time out of him to talk about all of his wonderful stage designs, and the production design is it's just great to me. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'd like to thank everyone who has been rating and reviewing the podcast on iTunes and other platforms. I really, really appreciate it that you even listen to this or any of the episodes. So thank you so much. In the last couple months, the audience has doubled. So thank you for listening. I am truly grateful. I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages. 4th of July is coming up. I hope you have your Stogie Floaty ready to celebrate. Stogie Floaty Luxury Pool Float. Great for a pool party, bachelor or bachelorette party, a cigar lover, even if you just want to float in style. Available now on Amazon, Etsy, and stogiefloaty.com.
Welcome to Pro Tips for the Pros, brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads. In this series, we'll explore essential advice for professional contractors to deliver outstanding renovation results. Let's dive in. Prioritize quality craftsmanship and materials to deliver results that exceed the customer's expectations. Attention to detail and superior workmanship will leave a lasting impression and ensure customer satisfaction. Thank you for joining us for this pro tip on planning thorough renovations. Stay tuned for more expert advice brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads.
A lot of people tolerate ordinary. Ordinary bathrooms, kitchens, entryways. Well, not on your watch. If you're a pro, you've got a new partner in town. Floor & Decor. From tile to wood to stone, Floor & Decor has more styles and job lot quantities of Schluter, Mapei, Laticrete, and other brands pros trust. Come see a whole new way to wow with Floor & Decor. Coming soon to Bailey's Crossroads.